Everybody. I hope you are having a wonderful day today and that you can see my screen. You can, as Denny said, I realized you can move my face all around the screen if you want to, which is a little bit scary, but if I'm with Denny and Jim, I'll be okay. So we are here at our second introductory Connexus Joy stream today. And yesterday, in our first Intro Connexus webinar, we talked about some basics and some things that facilitators needed to know, or people interested in Connexus needed to know. This Joy stream today is a little bit different because we're gearing it more towards people that are pastors, that are education directors, small group leaders at your home group or at your church, or the influencers, the agitators, the people that make things happen at your church. And Jim Martini has advised me that he is, in fact, an instigator and an agitator. That's probably illegal in some countries, but he is alive and thriving here. So we are about to
God bless the USA.
That's right. So we are about to embark. And if you are wondering who in the world Jim Martini is, Jim is the CEO for Life Model Works. Jim has been part of the Shepherd's House Board of Directors for a long time and is now the CEO of Life Model Works. And he is doing an awesome job, I think. So way to go, Jim. So let's talk for a minute. What if your church or your ministry could become a place where community and transformation became an actual normal part of what happens when you get together? What if that gathering of your community was a place where the weak and old, the weak and strong, the young and old, people that are brand new Christians and people that have been in the church for years, those that are stable and those that are struggling, those with lots of joy and those with not much joy. What if all that diversity could come together and experience the kind of joyful character transformation that it seems to all of us that the New Testament church should be about? What if that could happen? And what do you think would happen if that joyful transformation extended to families in your church, to the neighborhoods around you and around your people, to schools, the workplace, communities, and cultures, and spread over the entire earth? Imagine that for a minute. What if joyful character transformation and connections with God and others that were life-giving actually became a part of your churches or your programs or your ministry's DNA? What if that DNA was so strong in your church that it started to change the neighborhood around where you meet and the neighborhood around where your people meet? That is what I call a revolution of hope, and we want to talk in this Joy stream about how your church can be a part of it, because the change starts with you, and the change starts with your church. One of the things we wrote in the new book Joy Starts Here is that the church is the only organization in the world that is actually called to love other people and to help instigate character transformation all over the earth. I mean, there's no other organization with that kind of job description. That is us. That is who we are to be. What if you and your church could actually be that change? Hopefully today you're going to find out how that can happen. So today we want to answer these questions. What do we mean by a culture of transformation and the transformation zone? And what does your church need to create a transformation zone where lasting character change happens as part of your DNA? How does the Connexus program work and what is different about it? How can your church start And is training available and easily accessible for you and for your people? So let's go right ahead and get started. Connexus is all about a culture of transformation. Now we'll talk about these in a little bit more detail, but these are laid out clearly in the new book, Joy Starts Here. A culture of transformation is a place that has three things that are not usually found together, and that's a joyful, multi-generational community. It is great when 20-somethings or 30-somethings or teens get together and have a good time. But the ability for change to happen within that group is limited, primarily because they need younger people and they need older people at different stages of life who are glad to be with them to help them to mature, to help them to grow into the character of Christ. We need elders. We need people of all different ages who are glad to be together so that a culture of transformation can begin. And we need an Emmanuel lifestyle. That's where Jim Martini walks around throughout his day with an increasing sense of God's presence with him, so that at any point in the day he can connect with God to find out what God might be wanting him to do next, or say to this person, or do with his wife, or do with his children, or do with the board of directors. That's called an Emmanuel lifestyle, because Emmanuel means God with us. And if you read the New Testament, you will discover this is the way Jesus lived. He said, I'm only doing what I'm seeing my Father doing, and I'm only saying what I'm hearing him saying. So that's the kind of lifestyle that a culture of transformation needs. And the last thing we need is training for relationships, relational brain training. Now, sometimes Christians wonder, why are you now talking about my brain? And that question always intrigues me, because I almost get the question like, well, do you have one? I mean, would you want it to actually cooperate with what the Spirit of God wants to do within you? And you can't read through Scripture without discovering God is all about the relationship. I mean, you can start by looking at what Jesus said was the greatest commandment, which was to love in our relationship with God. And the second one is like the first, and that's to love other people. So you get at the core of what Jesus says relationship is about is love. Christianity is all about the relationship. So we increasingly in our culture need training to know how to connect with God in ways that are life-giving, and to connect with others in ways that are life-giving. And more importantly, some of us may know how to connect, but when bad things happen, when emotions get intense or there's relational breaks, we don't know how to repair the break. How many church splits do you know of that were caused when two people got bent out of shape with each other, especially if they're people of influence, and just take people with them when they go? Wouldn't it be better to know, to be trained to not only connect, but to repair relational breaks? Those three things, joyful multi-generational community, an Emmanuel lifestyle, and relational brain training, are all part of a culture of transformation that Connexus is all about. Connexus also puts three things together to create a zone of transformation. That's where people that are weak and people that are strong are together and interacting. It's where everyone learns to have tender regard for their own weakness and the weaknesses of other people. That means we become gentle with the places that we are not perfect and the places that bug us, in us and in other people. And our interactive presence of God maintains peace for everyone. These are the foundations for the entire Connexus program. So why do we need a culture of transformation and a transformation zone? Basically because low joy environments are all around us in families, churches, school, and the workplace. Character transformation is usually frozen. There's not enough change happening, and you don't have to look too terribly far to notice that relationships and people, institutions, organizations are breaking down all around us. The resulting trauma, abuse, addiction, painful relationships, and low joy lives that come from low joy environments always propagate on their own. Jim Wilder uses this example correctly, that if you imagine one pedophile, all the numbers of children that they could potentially abuse in their lifestyle, and the tons of people that all those children are going to impact, that sort of trauma and abuse will propagate low joy environments. It's like dropping a stone in a pond and you just watch the ripples stretch outward. Those things propagate all by themselves without any help. And that means that low joy and all those related issues are then passed on to the next generation. And the new book, Joy Starts Here, gets into this in a whole lot of detail. The problem is the lack of consistent joy and the resulting damage creates environments at home, church, and school that do not produce lasting character change. Without intentional skill training to help grow stronger joy-based relationships with God and others that are necessary for lasting character transformation, low joy environments and issues will always continue to reproduce themselves. It works like this. If I grow up in a low joy environment and I have a low joy lifestyle, I can only give you what I have. So what do I have to give you? A low joy environment and all the skills I have in that environment. Now, if I've got issues related to artificial sources of joy, which we often call addictions, if I have been traumatized, if I've been abused, if I don't really know how to connect in ways that are life-giving with God and others, guess what I will always pass on to you? Entire families, churches, schools, communities are frozen because low joy skills and issues are continually passed on. Connexus training offers the opportunity to change all that, because Connexus training creates the transformation zone and a culture of joyful transformation that will help your church be a place of lasting character change. We can end the thaw that has kept churches and schools and communities, the workplace and families locked up in low joy. It is time for the thaw. So here's our Connexus training flow. Now, if you are a pastor, if you're an influencer in your church, if you're the education director, or if you are a small group leader, I want you to know that the Connexus training flow begins with Joy Starts Here. Joy Starts Here is a study group for everyone in your church. It is designed to be multi-generational. It's designed for the weak and the strong, the young and old, people that are stable, people that are not as stable, people that are high joy, and people that are low joy. It is designed for everyone. And Joy Starts Here is based on the book Joy Starts Here, that we'll go into in a lot of detail in a minute, but it's designed to lay out and explain and describe and engage people in a process that's going to begin creating the transformation zone and a culture of transformation in your church. And the cool thing about leading Joy Starts Here groups is that you do not need me means that it is easily accessible to your church, your ministry, your program, your school, your entire community. It is on your doorstep because change and the transformation zone starts with you, and we have made it so easy for you to get going. We'll explain this more in a little bit. The good news is it doesn't stop there, it gets better. Because in Joy Starts Here, people would begin to realize you know, I am not as high joy as what I'd really like to be. And other people will realize, you know, I come from a pretty high joy background. Well, for both those groups, we have training modules, 12-week training modules. One is called Restarting, and one is called Forming. Restarting is designed for people that have discovered, as they go through Joy Starts Here, that they have lower joy levels, that they just don't have the kind of joy that they really want to have, and that they have some of the issues that are often connected with low joy environments, like trauma, like abuse, like just relationships that seem to not work real well, like trouble when they experience negative emotions or other people experience them, like addictions or attachments to things that are joy substitutes. People that are from higher joy backgrounds or environments, a lot of times they perceive their biggest need is to grow a deeper, more interactive, joy-based relationship with God. And Forming is designed to help them do that. Forming is 12 weeks of spiritual formation exercises where every week they engage with God through exercises to help them interact with Him more deeply. The neat thing about this is Restarting and Forming run simultaneously. So coming out of Joy Starts Here, you will want to prepare to lead both these groups. And as we'll mention later, online and live training in person is available for both Restarting and for Forming. So we're making the training as easily accessible to you as we possibly can. But it gets better. It doesn't stop there. Because after the lower joy people and the higher joy people have completed Restarting and Forming, both groups go into Belonging, which is where lower joy people who are sometimes seen as weaker and higher joy people who are sometimes stronger come together in a joy-based community to learn how to create relationship and a sense of belonging for each other. We'll go into some of the details about belonging in a little bit, but this is where the transformation zone really kicks into high gear, because you now have low joy people, high joy people of all different ages with different kinds of weakness, all interacting together with tender regard for weakness, where Emmanuel Shalom is maintaining peace for everyone. This is high octane transformation zone community, and this is available for your church now, today, to create a culture where character transformation is normal. Jim Martini has created a Steps to Transform Your Church chart. And Jim, I don't know if you want me to explain this or if you'd like to do this.
Well, I can walk through this, and gosh, you know, I feel like we need a little rest cycle here now after the peak of excitement about what happens and what it takes to finally get the weak and the strong together interacting meaningfully with Emmanuel keeping shalom. I mean, it's just so exciting. I feel a little bit like Peter. We should pitch some tents here and stay here a while. Like this place. Yes, I'd be happy to talk through here a little bit. So what we've shown is a little bit of the bigger picture. So what we're recommending, if you're just starting, is to go ahead and get as many groups together as you can to do Joy Starts Here as a study group. Some people do that. If your church already has small groups, then use your small groups. If you're an instigator and you're just trying to get started, then just get a group of people together and do it, and then try and get another group of people together and have each of the people that went through it go and get a group, and see what you can grow that way. Ask your pastor to do it with in their group or with some of the groups that are influential within the church. Once you've gotten, I'd say about 30 people through Joy Starts Here is the time that you're going to want to run Connexus, because then you're going to have enough people in Forming and enough people in Restarting. But as Ed will point out, as you're doing Joy Starts Here, you want to go ahead and buy the license for Connexus, for Forming and Restarting, And you want to go ahead and get your facilitators into the training so that they'll be ready to go once people are through Joy Starts Here. So there's kind of two things going on here. There's the flow from left to right, from Joy Starts Here to Connexus to Thrive. And that's what all the people are going through, that kind of a flow. And you might ask, well, once we're done with belonging, what do we do? Well, you go back now, and now's when you become missional. Because, someone was asking me, what's the greatest gift we can give, in our community? And we really believe it's restoring this relational fabric that's being destroyed. So go back here, find some people in the neighborhood that may not even be a part of your church yet. Bring them with you through this transformation, and Joy Starts Here. Go now through whichever of these, forming or restarting, is the appropriate one for them. Go with them through it. Go through belonging, and keep repeating that cycle, and you will not only be creating belonging in your church, but as Pastor Wallace pointed out in an email to me the other day, you'll also be missional. So I was really excited to see that, because I think that gets to the heart of what we're doing. It's creating belonging, restoring these relational lacks, and creating a missional tool. This sequence is kind of what the leadership does. So you go through the Joy Starts Here group. Again, no training required for that. You do send facilitators to the web training. And then the final thing that you do is you do send a few people in the community. These might be the leaders or some of the other people in the community that are able to take the time to do Thrive. Thrive has a couple of pieces. So the first thing you do is you do some prerequisites, and those can be done, right away. I would put some people on going through the Thrive prerequisites. These are things that are done via webinar and watching DVDs alone, because it's mostly lecture. And then all of the exercises take place at a 5-day training, which you'll see the schedule down here. March and July are when those trainings take place this year. To complete Thrive, and the reason we put it way over here kind of as the optional, advanced level for your regular member of the church, the reason we put it over here is because it takes 3 years to complete it. So you do your prerequisites, and even I recommend doing those even if you don't see when you're going to be able to find those 5 days, because that way, if the 5 days fall into your lap somehow, you've already got your prerequisites done. And there'll be more about that and the Thrive Club and all the people that are working on prerequisites coming up soon. And then you go for 5 days, you come back, you practice, you need a bonded partner to go with you. And then you go back again 6 months or a year later, and you go through another 5 days that level 2. And then you go finally through another 5 days for level 3. Now what this has done, once you put people through this training, is it has not only made sure that they have all 19 of the skills if they're missing some of those skills, but it also makes sure that they are able to transmit the skills, because what we found about most of these right brain relational brain skills is that most people receive them before they were 18 months old. So they don't know that they have anything special, and they certainly don't know how to teach anybody else how they got them. So it's good to have people in your community that have the skills and know how to transmit them. So we recommend that you always have 2 or 3 couples that have been able to go through Thrive and are part of the community there to help augment what you're accomplishing through Joy Starts Here and Connexus. Back to you, Ed.
Thanks. We have spent a lot of thought putting this training flow together, because we're really serious about transformation happening in local churches and trying to help churches become transformational. Let's take a quick look at Joy Starts Here and where you start and kind of how Joy Starts Here works. Joy Starts Here explains the culture of transformation and the T-zone or transformation zone elements that we talked about. Joy Starts Here contains individual and group exercises and weekly Bible studies for everybody at church, like we said, and our goal is to introduce everyone to the joys of becoming a joy starter. We want people to be able to share joy wherever they go, in their home, school, church, even their workplace. But Joy Starts Here focuses primarily on home, school, and church because these are the places that have the most impact on the next generation. The next generation are largely formed and shaped by these three areas. Each chapter in Joy Starts Here includes joy actions, assessments, which are really exciting, individual and group exercises, and a weekly Bible study. And like I said before, one of the good things about Joy Starts Here is we designed it to be run without specialized training. Let's talk about each of those things for a minute. Joy actions. Each chapter of Joy Starts Here has 3 suggestions to help your people start joy immediately at home, school, and church. For example, in Chapter 2, these are the joy actions we want people to do. Fly a kite with your family. Kites are sort of our symbol of just having a blast. I mean, who doesn't like flying a kite? So we're saying go fly a kite with your family. At school, greet somebody you do not usually greet. At church, it can be as simple as smiling when you introduce yourself to someone. Now, what if your whole congregation became a congregation of greeters? I mean, that would be pretty awesome. Imagine how somebody new walking in there would feel with everybody smiling and introducing themselves. So these are just simple joy actions that help your church become a place of transformation. Now, the assessments are really exciting because each chapter in the book has an assessment, and these are going to be online soon. But what do you think would happen in our church if these topics were regularly talked about? Like, when things go wrong here, do I still feel peaceful? Okay, or do people run and hide, or do they try to duck and dodge, or are they part of the reason that things go wrong? What happens when things go wrong? Another one, do I expect the people here will say kind things about my weakness? Does my church family help me find God's perspective when I'm distressed? Does love move me out of my comfort zone? Does what I'm expected to do here have value? What if your congregation could regularly take a look at the impact they're having on church and the people around them, and the impact the church is having on them? These assessments, for example, in Chapter 7, include things like, from page 145, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you answer this question? Every time something bothers me, I talk with God until I feel better. Individuals would do this. When things go wrong at church, we still feel peaceful. How true is that? I feel God is with me. How true does that feel? And you go on through these entire questions, and by the time you're done, you have a fairly decent idea about how you experience God's interactive peace with you. These are important things for people to take a look at because joy and God's peace are part of what the kingdom of God is made up of. So being able to check these things out and figure out where we need to grow and which Connexus module we need to go to next is really helpful. The cool thing about the assessments is by the time people are done with Joy Starts Here, the use of their assessments help them figure out if they need to go next to restarting or if they need to go to forming. How about group exercises? There are individual exercises each week that people will complete at home based on the week's reading. But there are group exercises that are discussed every week during Joy Starts Here groups. There are also weekly Bible studies. Scriptures discussed and questions are answered during the Joy Starts Here groups. Now what's very neat about this is if you go to joystartshere.com and you click on the resources link, you will find a downloadable PDF that explains to you how the Bible study portion of the group exercises should be run, and you will also find videos from Ambleside Schools International. Bill St. Cyr made these about how you can lead an interactive Bible study. So all the instructions you'd need for that we have already made available for you in a download and in video training that you can look at right from your office or right from your home. These are some examples of some exercises you'll find in Chapter 7. So for an individual, for example, if during the week they would answer, can you identify a time in your day where shalom was lacking? In group, they would be answering the questions together, what have you learned about shalom in your life and relationships? And during a regular day, how often do you feel shalom? And at the end, after all these discussions, it's take time to pray together. Ask for God's shalom. Does he have any additional thoughts for you? And discuss your thoughts and observations. These are all things that are bringing the transformation zone and joy and God's interactive presence home to your church or congregation. But you remember from our Joy Starts Here flow, we move into restarting and forming and eventually belonging. So let's take a look at how these individual modules work. Restarting, as we said, is designed for participants who identify themselves as having lower levels of joy. There are some pretty common denominators that go with low joy environments. There are painful or difficult relationships. There are painful or difficult emotions that don't seem to be resolved. Trauma, abuse, addictions, or strong attachments to joy substitutes tends to go with low joy environments. Forming is designed for participants who identify themselves as having higher levels of joy. And this is spiritual formation to help them grow a deeper, more interactive relationship with God. Forming is awesome because the goal of forming is to have our character changed by grace from the inside out as we interact with God. Restarting and forming, as Jim pointed out, both forming and restarting should be run simultaneously. And while participants are completing Joy Starts Here, you are going to want to identify potential restarting and forming facilitators in teams, because we always recommend teams. You want to start facilitator training to lead these entry-level modules before Joy Starts Here is complete. You want to move seamlessly from Joy Starts Here into forming and restarting. This allows restarting and forming to begin right away. Now, part of what makes Connexus so unique is Connexus modules are joy-based training exercises. Notice it doesn't say educational opportunities. Connexus is actual training that help participants connect in joy with God and each other as they learn and they practice essential relationship skills. Each Connexus lesson, whether we're talking about restarting, forming, or belonging, consists of approximately 1/3 teaching from weekly DVD lessons. David Tackle has created the forming module, and in forming, they will watch him on DVD. You'll see me on DVD in restarting and belonging. And the teaching basically prepares the groundwork for the exercises, because it's the exercises that actually help us grow joy, grow shalom, and all the interactive relationship skills that we need to thrive. So 2/3 of our time is then spent practicing exercises that help us acquire, that means get the skill if we don't have it, and strengthen, which means get better at the skill that we've heard about in the DVD lessons. Our emphasis is always relational skill training so that our relationships with God and others are growing in a high joy training environment. Now, after restarting and belonging, participants complete either one of those. They're going to go into belonging. And as I said, that's where you hit high octane transformation zone, because the weak and strong are together and interacting. Both participants from forming and restarting are together. And our first night in belonging is a special exercise to create small groups within belonging that consist of people from both forming and people from restarting. And those small groups are the places where participants are going to practice their relational exercises. So the weak and strong will be together and interacting with tender regard for weakness, while the interactive presence of God will maintain shalom. In belonging, participants will learn to create a joyful place for others to belong. They'll learn about appreciation skills. They will improve relational skills by learning to notice when the part of their brain that helps them connect with God and others are working and when it's not. They'll learn to quiet emotional and relational distress and reactivate those relational centers. They'll learn to recognize and respond to relational pain and relapse triggers to beeps. Beeps are the behaviors, events, experiences, people, or substances that we attach to because they're joy substitutes. So we want to learn how to recognize relational and emotional pain before we are diving into joy substitutes. In belonging, they will also discover how to grow trust in relationships and why people like them and how people can grow to trust them. They'll identify the signs when they're starting to feel overwhelmed and when they're overwhelming other people so that they will know when to stop. This is all about high octane transformation. When participants complete the Connexus training cycle, we want them to go back through Joy Starts Here and Connexus training with their family, their friends, their neighbors, and other church family members. We want the joy to spread. And if people don't go through Joy Starts Here and dive into something like restarting or forming, they can go back and do Joy Starts Here. People that have been through restarting may want to go through forming, and people that have been through forming may want to go back through restarting. And you're always going to want to start Connexus Facilitator training to grow new groups in the transformation zone. Keep your facilitators prepared. What you may discover over time is that you're going to need a lot more facilitators. So you're going to want to be sure that they are all trained. Now, to help you with training, there are JoyStream online Connexus training events. One of the issues we've been grappling with for a couple of years is how to make training better and more accessible. So what we'll be doing is starting next week on Wednesday, we're going to start webinars to teach facilitators how to lead each weekly restarting and forming lesson. And when we're finished with those, we'll start on belonging. These are going to be interactive online training sessions with me, and the training will equip facilitators to lead all 3 Connexus modules and allows them to interact with me about any problems or questions they have. You're also going to want your facilitators, and you're going to want to tune into the roundtables with Chris Corsi and Jim Martini and me and Denny and a cast of thousands. No, I'm just kidding. But what we're creating with the roundtables are interactive forums where Connexus facilitators, Connexus leaders, and people using these materials at their church can all interact together and learn from each other, ask each other questions, and basically, how do you get your groups growing? What's working for you? So these online training opportunities provide easily accessible facilitator training. Facilitators in the online Connexus training will learn how to facilitate every exercise, understand the overview of each lesson, and we want you to practice each exercise personally before you try to lead it, and hopefully with the church's Connexus team for that particular module. You want to kick the tires and get the kinks out before you start leading it. We also have live in-person training available for facilitators. There is the Joy Starts Here tour, which is beginning now. You can find out more about those training venues on joystartshere.com. You'll find out about Connexus live training events and Thrive training so that you can grow your personal and leadership skills. And truthfully, in-person training lets us do some things we simply can't do over the internet, because in-person live training allows you to practice exercises to actually grow the skills that you want to learn. And it gives you better understanding of how to facilitate your groups and create a zone of transformation wherever you go. Connexus training will help you succeed. Whether you're getting energized about Joy Starts Here, restarting, forming, belonging, online training, or Thrive training, the training will help you succeed. All this process of bringing character transformation as a normal part of the local church starts with you and starts with your church. That's what Connexus is all about. Now, Jim and I want to stop here, and we want to save time. We've got about 15 minutes left for questions that you may have about any of the content we've talked about. So, Denny, I don't know if there are questions or if people want to start asking them, but let's open it up.
So this is the time I mentioned when we first started. You can raise your hand and I will unmute you, and then you guys are free to share.
Well,
Jim,
we're
I
waiting
can't.
for the questions coming in. While we're waiting for the questions, I'll give a little shout out. I see Nancy Henry from Tucson out there again. Good to see you. I see Richard and maybe Jewel is there as well from Pennsylvania. Good to see you. Cheryl, I hear you're from Los Angeles, right here in my hometown. I'm kind of excited about that. Look forward to meeting you soon. And Pastor Wallace, glad you could be on the call with us today from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
So does anybody have any questions? Here we go. Oh, Wallace is saying he has Doug with him. You guys ready to ask questions? Who should I unmute? We should just randomly unmute somebody.
Oh, well, hi to Doug, right? Hey, glad you're there.
Oh, this is funny because everybody always has tons of questions after we end. Have you guys noticed that?
Well, so if Doug and Pastor Wallace want to tell us a little bit about what they're doing at their church and the need that they see and what they're learning about belonging, and if they think they can help them be missional, I'd love to hear from them.
I don't know if you can hear us or not.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, all right. Well, thanks for the opportunity to share. I think you guys did such a great job at presenting information, and that's why I don't have any questions. But what we're looking at is we're a church that's been in existence for about 27 years, and probably since the last 10 or so years, we've probably been in plateau, just kind of doing what we do. And I started asking questions, like, why are we here? Why do we show up on Sunday every Sunday? And the Lord started to lead me to look at the community, and there are greater than 14,000 people within a mile of where our building is, and we're a congregation of less than 150. Mm-hmm. And if statistics bear out, then there's probably 40% of those people are unchurched and don't know the Lord, and we're sitting here worshiping God. And so that kind of led us to thinking about why don't people come to church, and how can we change that. And so we started looking into what does it mean to allow unchurched people to belong to a community of faith long enough till they can see the glory of God in us, and ask why we believe what we believe. And so we're on a journey now of learning how to create that environment and how to decode our community to get them engaged with what we're doing, and for us to engage them. So I was thinking through how to apply this in our context, because we're just now launching small groups, and Started with a program called Alpha, and so now we're looking at others that we can add to create community.
Boy, I sure appreciate your heart. You really have a pastor's heart for your community, and that is awesome. You're asking good questions.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish I had all the answers, though.
Well, good answers come from good questions, so you are on the right track.
Which created a question, and that is, where do you see this program or this ministry fitting within the church context? Is it a small group, or is this a cultural expression? If that makes sense. Is this?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by a cultural expression.
Is it well, maybe corporate expression, meaning
Okay.
every facet of the ministry?
If joy is probably the greatest evangelism strategy. Joy to my brain means that someone is glad to be with me. It's pretty hard to invite somebody to church or a Bible study or a group study if you're not glad to be with them. So Joy Starts Here is all about how can we grow in being glad to be with people that we know and that we don't know. So I look at the content of Joy Starts Here as foundational for a lot of church activities, including mission activities. I do a lot of mission work, and joy is the foundation of what I teach everyone, including missionaries, because I do a lot of training for them. So I look at something like Joy Starts Here as fitting very well in a small group, but I see it as something that probably would be an awesome thing for everybody in your congregation. My suggestion would be get a hold of Joy Starts Here, and you and a small group of people read through it and go through it together first. And once you get a handle for it, take a look at how you could implement it in your congregation and even people outside of your church. We're talking, one of the things we talk about a lot in Joy Starts Here, it's clearly a book that has Christ at the center of it. But a lot of the things that we're talking about are things that anybody in our culture who cares about their family, cares about their children, cares about their future is going to want to think about. Like, how do we pass relational skills on to the next generation? What is happening in our culture that's making it less likely to be relational as time rolls by? And what does that mean for our culture? A lot of those things are addressed in the book, and how a culture of transformation and a transformation zone can help reverse some of that stuff. So my suggestion is you and a small group go through it together, kick the tires, work with it, and then think about bringing it to your congregation.
You mentioned also the idea of missions with this. Could you go into that a little bit more? We are thinking a whole lot about how do we turn our culture from ministry-focused, we're a church, come to us, to each person in the congregation being missional in their approach.
Okay. All right. Okay, let me back up for a second. Remember I said joy means that someone's glad to be with me? Remember?
Yeah.
Well, the glad to be with me part is something that I carry outside the church walls. One of the things I'm very big on training missionaries is how to grow joy for themselves so that they can be glad to be with other people that they're meeting or trying to minister to or just standing in the grocery store line with or changing in the locker room at the pool. If you grow your own joy skills, you will find that the world becomes your playground because everybody you meet becomes a person that you can be glad to be with. And when you learn the relational skills that we teach in belonging about how to create a joyful place for them to belong with you, you are a walking, talking missional person, because your life and your joy is being shared with everyone around you. You know, grace and joy are two forms of the same Greek word. Grace really means that we're outrageously special to God without having to work for it, and joy is my response to that. What I'm really saying is our people and missionaries can learn how much God is glad to be with them, grow their own joy, and then share that grace of being glad to be with other people wherever they go. It creates, at least as far as the brain goes, it rolls out the welcome mat. It totally rolls out the welcome mat so that other people will want to come in and be with you. Joy is powerful.
Thanks for answering that.
You're welcome.
All right. Does anybody else want to talk? Let's see. Everybody's quiet. We got about 4 minutes left. So Jim, Martini, do you have anything else you wanted to share as the unmute, babe, unmute.
Well, they say brevity is the soul of wit, so there's always a lag when I unmute. They say that brevity is the soul of wit. Now that I've said it 3 times, it doesn't sound very deep. But I would say there's nothing wrong with ending early. If we're done, we're done. So my takeaway, and I've already put it on. I've already added it to my buffer to go out on Twitter soon, and I've posted it on the Life Model site, is joy is the greatest evangelism strategy. So thank you for that, Ed. And, you know, let's go out there and increase some joy. I think I guess the companion to that is what Jim Wilder said. It's a lot easier to give joy than it is to try and get joy. It's a much better strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So let's all go create some joy today.
All right, sounds good. It's been a joy to be here with you all. So everybody have a great day. Go have some lunch or breakfast.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.